to finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Star Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Get ready for this.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Bebe Means Business Show. This is the show where you get all the information, tips and advice on anything and everything to do with business. And if you're joining us for the very first time, you are most welcome. My question to you will be, where have you been? But better late than never. It's really good that you could join us. So glad that you could take the time. I'm your host, Bebe Clement, and I'm the author of this book, How to Go From Employee to Entrepreneur. And alongside my husband, I also run a group of small companies. Now, I want to thank those who tuned in last week. For those of you who don't know how we roll on this show, every so often we ask our viewers to vote for the show that they enjoyed the most, and then we repeat it. So last week was one of those weeks, and so we repeated one of the shows. And we had Bimbola Osage on the show, and she was talking to us about the role of our credit score in building wealth. So that was a really good show, and I thank her for coming along. But the week before, we had a live show, and on that live show, I had special guests, Mark Dalgatti, who is the largest black farmer in Europe. And we had Dee Lana as well. Dee Lana is the award-winning author and entrepreneur. And we were discussing how to use a networking group to grow your business. That a networking group is supposed to be part of your marketing strategy. And so thank you for everybody that tuned into that. And today, we're doing something slightly different. Now, I think that it's important for us as a people, black people, to be aware of the issues that are facing our ability to create wealth, particularly in the UK. And sometimes it goes way beyond simple issues such as, am I promoting myself properly? Am I marketing myself properly? Am I positioning myself in the market the right way? That kind of thing. Sometimes the issues that we face go way beyond that. I believe that we should have a broader outlook about the collective financial emancipation of our people. And so in order for that to happen, we must arm ourselves with information about the wider issues that may be working against us as entrepreneurs and stopping us from becoming financially independent. I think we need to develop a more holistic approach to those issues and the solutions thereof. So today I'm really excited because I have a very special guest on the show, and his name is Dr. Carlton Brown, and he's the author of a report called the Black Entrepreneur Report 2021, and this report discusses the state of play for black entrepreneurs in the UK, and it's really important that we arm ourselves with the facts in relation to this report and the findings thereof. So, without further ado, I want to welcome Dr. Carlton Brown to the show. You are most welcome.
Bebe, thank you so much, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, to be able to discuss this most interesting, innovative, and exciting topic, which lends us to talk about the black entrepreneurship within the UK. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Now obviously your reputation precedes you, but it would be nice if you could just introduce yourself so our viewers know a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey.
Okay, so my journey started off, like many, within the corporate world. So I worked for an organisation called Rent-A-Kill Initial for 16 years, where I started off as a sales executive within the organisation and ended up being one of the regional directors in the healthcare sector, and I worked there for 16 years. Subsequently, I got headhunted and got for another FTSE 250 business, and I worked there for an additional 3 years as a national sales and marketing director. But at that point in my career, I actually felt I wanted to do something else. I felt there was a bit of a glass ceiling, and I wanted to spread my wings. So I went back at that time, prior to leaving, and did an MBA within business management. And I said, well, actually, I've got so much skills and expertise, and I wanted to help businesses. So I went down the route of becoming a management consultant. So that's what I've done, and I've been doing that successfully now for circa 20 years. But during that process, I had an affinity to understanding the performance and what made people perform better than others. And that was a real big thing for me. So, within the sales and marketing environment, within corporate environment, it's always about outcomes, performance, profitability, growth, sales, etc. So I decided that I want to really understand that. So I went back and did a PhD in performance management, looking specifically at the variables that impact on performance or peak performance within organizations. So that's what I did. So that's what I started to do. Once I finished that, I became a consultant, but my first 3 years of a consultant were choppy. And during that period of time, and we know being an entrepreneur is it's not linear, it's not straightforward. It's complex, it's iterative, it's not just in one straight line. But interesting, during that period of time, my old finance director and I, who worked together, said, Carlton, do you remember years ago we had this conversation about starting a business? We were in the healthcare sector in Rentokil. I said, yes. He said, do you still fancy doing it? I said, well, I've got this consultancy practice. He said, well, you can still do that, but we can also do this. So, lo and behold, we started a business called Just Washroom Services, which was we serviced hand dryers, air fresheners, soap dispensers, sanitary bins, nappy units. The completely unsexiest business you can think of. we were operating in toilets. However, we knew, in terms of any business, it's not about, we say turnover is vanity, profit sanity. Now, we started a business and we ended up growing it to £1 million business, and we ended up selling it, which was great. Our biggest customer ended up being Canary Wharf in central London. And we had a significant contract with them for several years until we sold the business. So we had that business. So I understood the nuances of running your own business, not only from a consultant's one-man solo business practice, but also we employed 20 people. We drivers, administrators, people in accounts, salespeople on the road, having cars, all vans, all of those logistical challenges we experienced. So that's what we did there. But in 2006, prior to me, I think the real catalyst for change was my wife, because she started a wedding business. So we had 2 wedding shops for 12 years. Selling very high-end premium, one in South Woodford and one in Romford. South Woodford, it was 2 doors away from Waitrose, but it sold, Justin Alexander wedding dress, Maggie Satira, all the premium wedding dresses you can think of. She ran a very successful business for 12 years, and sadly until her mum became ill, and she decided to sell. But yeah, so that was been my journey. Historically. And I continue to become a consultant, and I'm still a consultant today. But I also run a family business, a small family business called Marshall and Brown, and we are the purveyors of fine Caribbean foods. So not just so we do quintessential luxury rum truffles. And Bebe, when I see you next, you're definitely going to taste them, right?
I'm going to hold you to that. Okay. Thank you.
So that's my brief synopsis. Hopefully that's been useful.
Cool. What a journey. I like the bit about you were doing the business with the toilet. So there's a moral there. There's a lot of money in crap, guys. A lot of money.
Believe me, there is.
All right, guys. Okay, so let's jump right in there, because I've got a lot of stuff that I want to pull out of this report. As you can see, I've read the report almost like my Bible. I've gone through it many times. Quite a bit that I wanted to pull out. First of all, I understand that this report came on the back of the race disparity audit, it came from there, and I understand. Is that correct? Is that correct? It came on the back of...
Right. In 2017, I wrote a book around corporate social responsibility. But one of the chapters within there was corporate social responsibility and purchasing social responsibility within the corporate supply chain. So in essence, what I was looking at was ethnic minority businesses and how were they managing to navigate their path within the corporate world? In other words, were they getting any business in real terms? And essentially, the answer is no. They were getting some business. Were they getting a lot? No. Was there an interest in corporates doing business with ethnic minority businesses? Yes. But there was a disconnect between what their intentions were and what they actually did. So, but the focus there, because lots of the literature around the time was around ethnic minority businesses. So in 2020, 2021, I actually wanted to really understand what was the situation for black entrepreneurs. Was there a difference? Was there something significantly different towards ethnic minority businesses versus black entrepreneurs? Because we know the lived experience is different.
Yeah.
So I wanted to investigate that further. And it's interesting, Rishi Sunak in 2014 wrote a report for IPI and said there's a disconnect between what we see, an understanding about this homogenization. Why do we classify everyone the same? And it's interesting, a guy called Parry in 2017 said, actually there's no anthropological tribe called BAME. So BAME doesn't exist. But you and I both know that there's a disparity between the whole term BAME. If we look at educational institution, we say, well, BAME students are doing well. Well, actually, when you look at Asian students and Asian Chinese are performing higher, but if you say Black Caribbean or Black African, they're doing slightly less better. Or if you say Bangladeshi boys or girls, they're performing. So, but you've homogenized all of that, but actually we're a heterogeneous group of people. We're different. So I wanted to examine where were we as black entrepreneurs? Where were we?
Okay.
Yeah, so that was the essence of it. That was the core. That was the genesis of where it started.
Okay. It's interesting you mentioned that, because that's one of the things I was going to say, that this is probably the first report that I've seen that has made that distinction. And for those of you who don't know what BAME stands for, is Black and Minority Ethnic Groups, basically. And you've used the terminology, you've used BACD. What does that stand for those of us that don't know?
Okay, so we used the term in this report specifically as Black, African, Caribbean diaspora.
Okay,
so,
all right.
Black, African,
so for our listeners that are not aware, that's what he's talking about. Okay, so, and I think you're right. It's so important that we make that distinction, because really our struggles in the marketplace are totally different from the Asian man's struggle in the marketplace. And it does us a disservice and gives a distorted picture when we're all lumped together. Sure. Okay, so I'd like to go through some of the highlights. Some of your findings cover things like access to finance, social capital, the issue of mentoring, contract opportunities, skill building, and all that kind of stuff, unconscious bias, lack of information. Now, let me start with the lack of information bit. First of all, this is only in the last few weeks that I've even been aware of this report. So let's not even talk about lack of information beyond our shores. Within the black community, why is this report not more widely spread or known about? Because I've asked quite a few people who are black entrepreneurs, and they've never heard of it either.
Well, the report went out to lots of people, lots of different organisations and institutions. Now, whether how widely that people decide to pick it up and disseminate it, that's a different question. But the research is out there. Lots of the corporates have picked it up. Hence why they decided that on the back of some of the reports, so some of the larger institutions such as NatWest, for example, MSD UK, London Chamber of Commerce have picked it up and felt that the report was of sufficient granular gravitas that it warranted us to take it to the next level of having a conference. But we'll come on to that a bit later on. But the point is, I mean, the report's out there, it's been widely circulated. It's about, there's lots of reports out there. Last month, NatWest, Lloyd's released their report, Lloyd's Bank. I don't know how many people are aware of that particular report. In 2021, NatWest with Cream also produced a report. Now, information's out there, knowledge is out there, but sometimes you have to go look for it, We've produced this report as a boutique agency, consultancy agency, and we've published that to the wider community. Lots of people have taken it on board. We've had people from local government pick it up, etc. So
brilliant.
The information is available. But it's about wanting to access it, and sometimes you have to look for a bit of information if you're looking to do it as well, to be fair.
Yeah. All right, guys. Now, I know some of you who are listening, you run networking groups. Listen, guys, you need to get a hold of this and disseminate it around your groups within the Black community so that they are aware. It's really important that you do that. Actually, where can they get that, to be honest? Where can they get it?
So you can go to www.aspire-consultancy.com. So that's www.aspire-consultancy.com. And there's a link that you can go there, you can download a copy of the report.
Okay. All right. Now, my view is that a lot of the findings, and I stand to be corrected on this, but my view is that a lot of the findings indicate a lack of will on the part of the powers that be to, for want of a better phrase, share the cake. And I was thinking about that, and then on a deeper level, when I thought about it, I thought, well, actually, why should they want to share the cake with us? Of what benefit? So if I was the CEO of some large white-owned corporation right now, and I'd read the report, and I'm thinking, actually, what benefit is it to my company to have more Black people involved, to have more Black people supply products to our company? What would you say to those people?
Well, first and foremost, there's enough literature and data that says that organizations that invest more in diversity perform better, both in terms of productivity, in terms of performance, and profitability. So if you're a commercially minded enterprise of any description, that makes commercial sense. So from that perspective, it makes commercial sense. Forget the moral ground, that it's actually the right thing to do. But actually, you should think about your moral duties and responsibility, because that's part of your corporate social responsibility. That's one side. But the second side, actually, it's good business practice. Now, that's one area. Secondly, when you're looking at your talent pool, whether that's internally or externally, it makes good practice for any organization to look for the best possible talent or the best possible supplier. But you say that means you can't just exclude one part of the community. You need to have a really peripheral 360 perspective, that you're looking at this and saying, where's the best talent? And you need to ensure that you're looking at all of the talent pool and not just some of the talent pool. That's the key thing for them. So the answer to that question, if you're looking to make a successful business and you want to solve 21st century problems, you need to have 21st century thinking. And we call that cognitive dissonance. Well, not cognitive dissonance, that means tension. So we call this cognitive diversity. So if you want to solve a problem within your business, where do you find, so for example, there's a couple of people I know who are in the tech space, and they've come up with some wonderful gadgets, which they've innovated. One has been a translating AirPod that translates languages into 40 different languages instantaneously. Okay, it's run by a guy called Danny Manu. Okay, it's called Click. Now, he's creative, he's innovative, he's found something through his love and passion for tech. He's designed this app. Now, he's solving a 21st century problem because that's what he's decided to do. And he's got that expertise and competency. Now, if he's not been around, if you didn't engage with someone like that, you would never have solved that particular problem.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying here, if you really want to engage and solve your business problems or come up with new ideas and innovation, you need to access the entire talent pool, not just some of it. So that's the key thing.
Okay.
So if you can improve your profits, your performance, and your profitability, access the full talent pool and not just some of it.
Okay. All right. So if, again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. So if, for instance, there's still that view that actually companies are not really interested. They're making the right noises, especially since George Floyd. They're definitely, I think there's a greater awareness, greater realization that this is necessary, morally and otherwise. But overall, we're still seeing a reluctance. Let me use that word, a reluctance. Should we, as the Black community, be doing more to hold such companies to account? I'm not sure what that would look like, but should we be doing more to hold such companies to account?
Well, I think
should there be more punitive action?
Look, I think you're right in what you said. There is a lot more of an awareness. Now, in that report, I've come up with a new construct, and I've called it the race paradox. Now, the paradox says there's an unconscious illusion of inclusion that supports equitable coexistence. So in other words, organizations believe that they're doing the right things, but there's a disconnect between what they're saying, quite often, the intention versus the reality. Now, it's easy to say, well, that's easy to solve, and it's not. It's a complex structure, it's systemic and it's structural. So, example, if Bebe, as a consultant, goes to a tender for a piece of business with a local government, let's say, or for a private large corporation, there's a thing called a pre-qualification questionnaire that you will have to complete, right? And there'll be certain boxes that you once you've ticked them, it allows you access to that opportunity. But as an individual, quite often, you may not tick the criteria of being able to gain access to the opportunity in the first instance, even if you're qualified to do so. So, what needs to happen? The organisation internally needs to look at their own and what I call destructuring their supply chain. What is it that we used to do, which is preventing us from gaining access to having a more liberal, more open, more transparent supply chain where Black and minority entrepreneurs can gain access to opportunities? So sometimes it's structural. So sometimes the intentions are there, but their systems don't allow that to happen. So that's one example. Second example is this. If you and I are sitting around the table, 6 of us are making decisions about opportunities, there are various things that come into play of how we process those decisions. An example, you mentioned the word unconscious bias. There's what we call conformity bias. So people in an organization want to conform with what the culture of that business.
Yeah.
There's culture. There's organizational culture. Well, the culture of our business is we do this. Sometimes it's unconsciously, but also we have a thing called group thinking. You and I, if we've known each other for a long time, hey, this is how we think over here. Listen, that's how we just, we're just going to do it this way because that's how we've always done it. So it's not as straightforward as I like to think. It's a bit more complex than just saying, let's go and take punitive. I think we need to take action. We need to engage. We need to make sure that we are visible. We are knocking at those doors, and we have to change mindsets, and we also have to change structures. But the only way we can do that is by, engaging. But believe me, there are lots of companies who even, that we call it brand equity, but, your brand gets more play, more awareness, particularly when you engage with more diversity today. So it's actually the organization's interest to engage more. So I look at it from the positive perspective. So actually, what more can we do to help them to change their behaviors, their mindsets, and their systems? That way, they grow and we grow, and it's a win-win.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay, I won't pick up the picket just yet. Then I'll lay that aside. Then. Okay, we're going to take a break in a minute, but just before we do, I wanted to ask you this. One of the things that you spoke about was finance, us being able to raise capital, or the difficulties that we're having in raising capital. Should we not now be looking inward for homegrown investors, because you'd be amazed the number of people who believe that there is no access to finance within our community, and it's not true.
True.
What are your views on that?
No, you're absolutely right. Listen, let's be clear. There's not one recent contemporary report that does not suggest or confirm that having access to finance is an issue. It is. So let's put that on the table to start with. Having said that, there are lots of new innovative ways of raising finance. And in fact, at our conference, we have Cornerstone Venture Capitalists, which is run by a chap called Rodney Appiah. Now, he has raised lots of finance and capital in order to invest into organizations. There is, we have a chap called Eric Collins, who's the moneymaker from Channel 4. He's got a venture capitalist business that you can invest black businesses. Similarly, we have a small company called Lendo, who lend microfinancing, so small levels of financing. So what I'm saying, there are alternative sources, and there are sources of lending through black-led organizations as well as traditional lending methods. So they exist, they're there. We just, again, it's about going out and understanding where they exist. Where are they? How do we find them?
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we collectively share that information and knowledge and insight so they can access and say, actually, all right, this is where I can get money from. Because we know in order to grow your business, to be sustainable or to innovate, sometimes you do need capital to support your business, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to humbly add my voice to that I work with a group of investors who also, they're willing to invest in our businesses. So I think the message to get out is that the money is there, guys. The money is there. So don't think you have to go somewhere else. The money is in-house. You can access it in-house. All right, we're going to take a break right now, and then when we come back, I've got some more questions for you, Dr. Brown, but this is a really riveting and an eye-opening session for me, so thank you very much again for being here. Don't go away, guys. We'll be back in a moment. The show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Star Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Get ready for this.
Okay, guys, welcome back. It's your host, Bebe Clement. We're tuning into the Bebe Means Business Show, the show where you come for all your advice, tips, knowledge, and information in relation to doing with business and entrepreneurship and how you can become financially free. And today, with much honor and pleasure, I have Dr. Carlton Brown on the show, and we are looking at the Black Entrepreneurs Report, the Black Entrepreneurs Report. Okay, so Dr. Brown, just before we went on the show, we were talking about raising capital within our own community, and that's great. I want to talk a little bit now about the conference. You've got a conference coming up. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? How did the conference come about? When is it? Just give us some details about it.
Okay, so the conference came around on the back of the report that, as I said earlier on today, that the people like NatWest and London Chamber of Commerce identified, looked at the report, had discussions with them, and they felt, we felt it would be appropriate for us to host a conference on the back of that, to share a best practice. The whole premise of the conference is about empowerment, engagement, and education. So how can we get empowered? So empowerment comes from telling great stories, seeing great professionals, such as yourself, Bebe, within the conference, meeting other great professionals and entrepreneurs. So we learn sometimes vicariously through others, right? So seeing and hearing those stories from others, their experience, how they've done it, is really insightful and really powerful. Secondly, engaging. We've invited corporate buyers along from the corporate world, so we can understand exactly how do we navigate that path, how do we get those contracts and those opportunities. And finally, the education piece. We've got people from finance telling us how we need to finance, what we need to do, how we can do it better, what are the tools, what are the tips, what do we need to understand within that space. So the conference is being held at NatWest Conference Centre on the 14th of July at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
We have a plethora of speakers. We have one room dedicated to female entrepreneurs. It's called the Female Empowerment Room, which I'm pleased to say you are part of. Excited, and Dr. Claire and Michelle Moore, lots of Nicola Millington, great speakers.
Yeah.
We then have Eric Collins, we have Wilfred the Black Farmer, we have Henry Bonsu, Lord Hastings. We have an exceptional day lined up. And to share best practice, to network, to see, to hear, to learn. And I think if we can do those things collectively, we come away stronger for it. And I think that's really important. So I look forward to seeing you guys on the 14th of July.
Okay. All right. Now, the information about the conference. Oh, thank you. My producer's already putting that on there. So there's information about the conference going on throughout the show. So please make sure that you come along to that. It's really important that you do. For the reasons that Dr. Brown has just highlighted, it's important that you do. And if you've ever wondered, actually, how do I access this world? Because for a lot of us, it's a world that we seem shut out of. So how do I access this world? Come along, and get the information that you need. Okay, now I'm going to say something that's slightly controversial, but I do want to say it. So I'm gonna. This is the joys of having your own show. You can say things. Okay. So first of all, I want to shout out to NatWest for sponsoring this event and Chamber of Commerce as well, but particularly NatWest, because I think probably more than any other organisation that I can think of, NatWest has had a long-standing relationship with the black business community in the UK. I remember when I first came over to the UK in the late 80s, early 90s, NatWest used to put on all these networking events, and they were always full of black people. So they've shown their commitment to us for years, and it's good to see that they're still doing that. But having said that, sometimes we kind of get the feeling that these organizations come along and they almost try us on for size, if you know what I mean. They kind of flirt with us and then they go back to their abode. How do we build, now that you have the ear of such companies, such organizations, how do we build upon the relationship? How do we take it further and make it more concrete so that we don't just see them once a year, but there is an ongoing relationship with the black business community?
Okay. Really interesting and good question. Now, I think first and foremost, you said that NatWest have been doing this since the 80s and they continue to do it now. So that's one thing. Two, I think as an organization, they are invested. Not only have they produced a recent report themselves, and part of their group thinking, they've engaged with black entrepreneurs to be part of that whole process, because I think it was Stephen Covey said, if you wish to be understood, first you need to understand. So that's the thing. I think they're making consistent approaches to try and understand and become better. And as I said, it's because some things are structural and systemic over time. It doesn't change instantly over time, but we have to work progressively and ensure that there is change. Now, 2012, I think there was a report by MSD UK. Good example. It's called the Impact Assessment Report. And what that showed is corporate organizations, in general terms this is, felt that if they were encountering an ethnic minority business, 36% of those corporate members felt that the ethnic minority business would be less capable than their current counterpart. Less capable. That was the perception. Now, in 2019 or 2017, I can't remember the exact year, but that second one, they did a similar report called the Assessment Impact Report. And in this case, the report showed a significant uplift and difference in terms of perception. So what I'm saying, it is, whilst it's not quick enough, there has been a shift. Now, how do we have to continue to engage, is the answer to your question, Bebe, I think. We have to continue to be part of their committees. We have to be on their table. We have to have representation at every level within those institutions. And we have to continue to push to do business with these people consistently, these organizations. But there's an appetite there, and we have to recognize there's a genuine appetite. Now, do they do it as quickly as we'd like it? No. Is it as buoyant as we'd like it? No. Can it get better? Absolutely, yes, it can. But I think we have to, and I don't want to sound like a politician, but it has to. We have to work collaboratively to get this thing to move forward, and to make sure we hold them accountable. One of my recommendations is that, organizations, whether it be NatWest or anybody else, they need to measure diversity spend within their organization. In the end of the month, when they have their boardroom review, they look at their KPIs and their matrix. How have we done against this particular objective? How are we performing? Because we know what doesn't get measured doesn't get done, right? So it's important that they measure it. So there's a raft of recommendations, not only from my report, but others. And some of them are similar, but one of the key ones is about measurement. That if we can start to measure and make it more transparent and clear about what is expected and what do they want to achieve. Because if they've got the aims and objectives, that they say they want to do this, let's measure it. Let's make sure that it's out there on the table.
Yeah.
Which means we can hold people accountable for that.
Cool. All right. Thank you for that. One of the things that I found interesting was that you're going to have a group of young entrepreneurs come along to the conference, and I thought that was vital because it reminded me. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I founded a networking group many years ago called Black Businesses UK, and it's probably one of the largest networking groups for Black people in the UK. We have over 8,000 members. But one of the things that we used to do, we haven't done it recently, is go into schools and do things like career talks, mentoring talk. We used to sponsor debates and stuff like that to improve public speaking skills of our kids, that kind of thing. Now, I remember going into a particular school in Thamesmead, which is in South London, many years ago, and I was doing this career talk for, I think they were doing their A-levels, yeah. So it was a group of kids that were doing their A-levels. And as I was speaking to them, I could tell that I was losing them. They were disengaging and their eyes were glazing over and stuff. And then all of a sudden, somebody shouted out, one of the guys shouted out from the back of the room, Miss, how much does your company make a year? I was very taken aback by that question. But I thought, should I tell them, should I not? And then I thought, okay, I'll tell them. So I told them. And immediately I told them, there was a complete change in the whole atmosphere. There was thinking like, whoa, really? That kind of thing. And I found that interesting because it wasn't a large figure, to be honest. It wasn't a large figure at all. But I found that interesting. And later when I engaged with them and everything, I was talking to them, it became very clear that this particular group of kids, and I think they're pretty much a mirror of a lot of our kids across the board, did not think that Black business owners could make that kind of money. So they'd already settled in their mind as to what is possible for them. And I found that heartbreaking. I really did. So I'm just really so pleased that you're engaging with young people. And I've tried to do my little bit as well. On this show, I do a series called Under 30 and Overachieving, where we highlight Black entrepreneurs, up and coming Black entrepreneurs who are doing well, and we have them on the show so they can tell their story. But how can we, as Black entrepreneurs, become more visible in the community? because we're absent. Whenever I go to a community event and we have an opportunity to showcase what we do, I can't find us. How can you encourage black entrepreneurs to be more visible in the community so that our young people can see it? Because if they can see it, they can be it. That's the way.
No, and I get it, but I think there are lots of organisations today who are highlighting entrepreneurship.
All ladies, you are invited
people
to
like yourself.
13th annual women's conference.
I just got to think of Weiler, Young Leaders Academy, run by a chap called Andrew Mohammed. If I think about Charmaine Simpson at Black History, or I think about Professor Les Henry, who does talks around understanding who we are as a community. There are lots of institutions. Now, in terms of visibility, I think you're right. There's more needs to be done. Pentecostal Credit Union, Elaine Bowers, they do lots of stuff around young entrepreneurship. There are lots of church groups who do things around entrepreneurship. We don't always see it. That's the challenge. You're saying we're not that visible. And partly, and I don't want to keep harping back to the conference, but the conference is about visibility. It's about us coming together as a community and inviting, there's a chap called Julian Hall. I'm not sure if you know Julian.
Yeah.
But Julian does a lot of stuff around youth entrepreneurship, specifically from, 8 years old, 9, 10 to 11, 12, whatever the age. Now, we've invited Julian along, and he's bringing some young entrepreneurs because it's important that they see, and I keep going back to this storytelling about empowerment. We learn through vicarious experience. If I can see a Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, the black farmer, if I can see an Eric Collins, if I can see a Bebe Clement, if I can see these people in person and hear their stories, if I can see a Nicola Millington, if I can see these people in essence, actually, as you said, if I that's what it was. That is, if I can believe it, I can see it, if I can touch it, I can feel it, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's possible for them to do it, but I think we do sometimes operate in silos, and that's unfortunate. Not in all cases, but we have to try and figure out how do we join the dots. And I think one of the ways we can join the dots is by putting on events and ensuring that we have the responsibility of inviting entrepreneurs who they can share their stories with others. And I think that's really key. But there are a lot of people, let's not lose sight though, there are a lot of people who are doing some great stuff.
Yeah.
I mentioned Julian Hall, Andrew Mohammed, Professor Les, Charmaine Simpson, yourself. There are lots of people doing stuff out there and are visible. Is there more to do? Absolutely, yes, we can do more.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a shout out to all of you who are doing something. Well done. Okay, I think this is important, not to try and bemoan the point, but I do think it is important. I was reading, I did a show, or a couple of shows actually, about what we could learn from the Jewish community, what we, the black community, can learn from the Jewish community in relation to wealth creation. And one of the things that came out of that show was something I had read in a book called The Jewish Phenomenon. And in that book, they were talking about after World War II, the European Jews had organized and a lot of them ended up in New York in factories, because that was the only work they could get. They were in factories. But something significant came out of that. They were saying that the Jewish factory worker was a one-generation phenomenon, because they determined as a people that we will pay the price for our kids, but the next generation are going to own the factories. And that's what they did. How do we get that mindset? How do we adopt that mindset? Because, and the reason why I say that is because when we came over in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have anybody to show us the system, how the system worked. And so again, a lot of us went and did jobs because we had to pay the bills and that kind of thing. But we didn't have this mindset that, okay, I'm going to lay myself down for future generations. Because the generation that has come after, I'm not seeing much difference. There's a bit, yeah, but again, our mentality is still, let me go and get the first job I can, as opposed to, how can I be a job creator rather than a job seeker? How do we as a people develop a collective mindset that we're going to own the factory?
Well, first of all, I don't subscribe to that view. I don't subscribe I don't subscribe that we haven't changed much. I think we have. I genuinely think we have. So there's a guy called George Fraser, and he wrote a book, Success Runs in Our Race. Okay? Yeah. And success has historically run in our race, and we should never ever lose sight of that. Some of the greatest entrepreneurs, innovators, and creators have come from the Black African Caribbean community. So the first of all, we never lose sight of that. We are entrepreneurs, we've been global entrepreneurs, and we are still entrepreneurial till this day. So let's not just think that we're not. You know, if we think about even today, some of the, you know, I still think, I can't remember if it's Stansted, if it's City of London Airport or Gatwick, which is who's owned by, who owns it?
A Nigerian guy, I forgot his name.
A chap from Nigeria. A chap from Nigeria, but how many people know that?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, that success does run in our race, not just today, and I think we can look at other communities, but I think we should always look at self, start with self. And historically, we can talk about philosophies of Garvey. Garvey says it's about self, do for self. And we have always done for self, historically. Now, what you're suggesting is about, lay down and think about for the younger generation. I think, lots of our communities have done that historically. So if I think about when my parents first came to the country in the 50s and the 60s, to where we are today, it's a significant shift. And there's lots of young entrepreneurs. If I think about Rhoda today, or Izzy Obeng today, if I think about Demi at Lendo today, all under 30s or early 30s for sure, who are doing some wonderful things, innovative, creative entrepreneurs. So I think we are doing lots. We don't always see it because I think there's a lack of visibility. So I think that's a bit more of an issue to do with our PR and our public relations and our awareness. And if we, what we need to do is actually start to engage more PR agencies to get that visibility growing, and so we can demonstrate the goods that we're doing. But there's lots out there, BBs. Let's not lose out there. There's a tremendous amount of work going on out there from some amazing entrepreneurs who are doing some fantastic things. And, I've seen people who've started their own law practices recently, tech firms, finance firms, design agencies. So, and it's not just historical retail shops or takeaways, and they're important. Don't take me wrong; they're important, essential to the community, absolutely. But we're far more than just that, and we are doing far greater things that sometimes are out there. But I think part of it is visibility, in truth.
Is visibility. Okay, that's cool. Now, just to say that this is a live show, guys, and so if you want to ask any questions or you have any views, then please, by all means, give us a call on 07539 661744, or you can put something in the chat. I know a lot of you are watching on Facebook, and shout out to everybody that's watching on Facebook. Thank you so much. Also, if you want to contact us through Twitter, our Twitter handle is @StarRadioUK. That's @StarRadioUK, and then we can answer any questions you have or any views that you may have on anything that we've spoken about. You don't have to agree with everything we said. If you have a different view, then by all means you have an opportunity to express that view. All right. So we're coming towards the end, but I still have quite a bit to talk about. One of the things that I've noticed is they say that Black American women are the fastest growing entrepreneurial group at the moment, and I understand that the FSB here found in 2020 that a high percentage of ethnic businesses are led by women. Yay! What do you think is the reason for that?
Well, also, just to echo that, in the Black Entrepreneur Report, we identified 58% of the recipients were female. Yeah. Now, there's an old parable, saying, phrase in Ghana: if you ever want to build a nation, you build it through the female line.
Yeah.
So I think, when I think about, contextually, I think about my mother as an example. She was always the innovator, creative, whether that's from finding opportunities to work. When she first came to this country in 1962, she didn't have the opportunity to borrow some money from the bank. She wanted to buy a house. She also wanted to start a small catering business, and they turned her down. So what did she do? She turned to, there's an old African Caribbean system, susu, or partner, where it's a social lending system. She started her own. She started her own and borrowed, and she became the banker. She grew, and then she started to do catering for weddings and parties, and also she got the money together and she made her house. So innovation and creativity, I think, is part of the female psyche. I think they're very exceptional in the way they think, how they think, and what they do. And I think it's no surprise to me that they are the dominant force in entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And I read the FSB report in 2020, so I do know, I've said the report as well.
Okay. I've just had something come through from, I'm not sure who these are, but it says, FB Comms. It says, we are biased, but selling a narrative is so important, and investing in PR is also important as well. Well, thank you very much for those remarks. That it's important that we tell our own story and we invest in PR in doing so. Thank you so much for those comments. Okay, one of the sessions, of course, at the conference is a women's only session, just on the back of what we've just been discussing. Why did you think it was important to have that? What's the dynamic that a women's only session is going to bring to the conference?
Well, the first, I go back to the previous question. 58% of the recipients are female, and that was in our report. But you're right to reference the FSB, Federation of Small Business report. They also said the dominant force is female. So if you've got a dominant audience, which are female, it would be remiss of me not to have a conference that includes the dominant force. So it makes practicals, it makes sense of, it just makes common sense to have that alignment. And it's important that we have that balance. It's really important that we have that balance as well.
Yeah. So ladies, come along. There's lots of room for you. You definitely make sure that you come along to the conference. We're going to have a room just for us where we can just talk about the things that concern us in business. So make sure that you come along. Without guys, come along. Okay. Now, one of the things that you found was that BACD groups are unusually educated, with 30% having a degree, at least a first degree, as a minimum. And obviously that's a plus. The findings would suggest that is a plus. But I was going to say that sometimes I think that can be a hindrance, because I think often we have brought into what in my life I've discovered to be somewhat of a fallacy, that book smart and money smart are the same thing, and they're not. I found that they're not at all. And I found that sometimes the more educated you are, the less of the mindset of an entrepreneur you tend to have. So for instance, entrepreneurs are by their very nature risk takers. And sometimes the more educated you are and you're trained or geared towards employment, the whole concept of risk is a problem. So even when you transition from being an employee to an entrepreneur, just that simple mindset is very, very difficult to get over. So what are your views to that? Can you speak to that?
No, I understand what you said. I understand. So, when you go through academia, it's about critical thinking, analysis, weighing things up, making good decision, bad decision, is that right, is that wrong, and we become more risk averse. And you're right, entrepreneurs tend to be not that don't consider risk, but they actually see through the risk and they think about the opportunity. They see more about the opportunity rather than the risk. Right? And I don't think that we just condition ourselves to work. Now, when I went back and studied and did my MBA, what that gave me was the insights and knowledge to say, oh, actually, this is how I can maximize potential opportunities. As opposed to looking at inversely saying, actually, it's going to be more difficult. So I think you're right. I think sometimes it can be a challenge, but being an entrepreneur, having an entrepreneur mindset versus entrepreneur, as in I want to work in an organization, is two different mindsets. Being book smart and money smart, I agree. I think that, but being educated, let's not lose sight of that. It's really important because that also gives you the tools to analyze and assess where you are. Yes, I need to understand about finance. Yes, I need to understand about marketing. I need to know about market segmentation, demographic profiles, consumer behavior, how to sell, how to close, what's features and benefits. I need to understand, but at least you have the capacity to do it. And I think, and you have the ability to research, and that's the tools that education gives you. So I think we should never just dismiss education. I think education is fundamental. And I think education is a thing that will help us as a community in general terms, but also entrepreneurship sets. But having both together, fantastic. I think we can't dismiss education. Yes, there are different skills. There are different skill sets. Agreed. And sometimes I think what you're saying, I think what I'm hearing here is, the entrepreneur who's, out there going for it, mindset is less risk averse, versus someone who's a bit more conservative, stable, can I do this, etc. So I think both are necessary.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Really important. Totally agree with you. Okay, we're nearing the end, so I think I'm going to get one last question in there, and then you can go for the conference for the last 30 seconds. All right. So one of the things that I thought was a bit of an anomaly, and you might not agree, in your findings, was that 49% of black businesses have been trading for over 5 years. And that was a good thing. That was highlighted as a good thing, of course, because we know the lifespan of a normal business when they normally start out. But over 49% of black businesses have been going beyond 5 years. But then, so the suggestion was that we are outperforming in the long term, which was a good finding. But then I looked at, you stated that 46% were making under 25K, and 22% were making between 26 and 50K, and I think only 3% were making over $1 million. So my question, I think, would be, is the finding of longevity, is it as great a thing as we are making it out to be? And I'm not knocking it in any way, thank God for it. Or is it a case of us perhaps not knowing when to throw in the towel? Again, I'm playing devil's advocate. What's your view?
Okay. Sage wrote a report many years ago. It says that 50% of startups will fail in the first 5 years. 50% of startups will fail in the first 5 years. So what we've seen here in this report is that there's a degree of sustainability. Now, but that just lends itself to talking about the types of industries that those individuals may be in. And don't forget, a disproportionate amount of them were micro businesses by definition. Okay. So, if you're a micro business and you're happy to earn a particular salary or a particular amount of money, and that suits your profile for your business, well, that's fine. But let's focus on 49% of being in business longer than 5 years. That's a big feature. That's really important to understand now. Yeah. Because when you've got 50% of businesses failing within the first 5 years, what does that say? They're sustainable. Yeah. Whether they're setting the world afire or they haven't taken it to the next level, that's entirely down to the entrepreneur themselves. That's their choice. How do they want to grow it? How do they grow it? Do they need support to help them grow their business? That's one question. But equally so, the other end of that scale, you've got businesses which are exceeding, millions of pounds of business, which is great. Now, there are some people in there who have not, I've not interviewed, for example, but I know about. If they were part of that cohort at that time, they're turning over tens of millions of pounds. So it depends on, that was the cohort of those entrepreneurs at that time. But let's not lose sight, they are solid businesses. If they can be in business for 5 years, and that's solid. Now, the second step, can they do better? Yes. Can they learn more? Yes. Can they, can they learn about strategy a bit more, learn a bit more about marketing, have a bit more PR, understanding how to control their finances better? All of that is possible to do better. Well, the key thing, of course, Bebe, the way to learn it is come to the conference on the 14th of July, and they can access some of that information and knowledge.
Yeah, nicely done. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. You have been tuned into the Bebe Means Business Show. I'm your host, Bebe Clement, and I've had the honor of interviewing Dr. Carlton Brown, and we've been talking about the Black Entrepreneurs Report, which you can get from Aspire Consultancy. I'm sure if you Google it, it'll come up anyway, so you can get that. Also, he's been talking about the Black Entrepreneurs Conference coming up on the 14th of July, details of which you can see flashing across your screen, and we'll be sending out some more information about that. But do come along. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be speaking as well with the utmost honor. Lots of other ladies. Shout out to everybody that's going to be speaking at the event. Can't wait to meet you, see you, learn from you. Lots to learn from you. Dr. Brown, thank you so much for being on the show and for putting this conference and indeed this report together.
Thank you, Bebe. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being on the show. Thank you.
Okay. All right, guys, so I'll be here again same time next week. And in the meantime, as you always know I say, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life. Now go make some money. Bye-bye.
Hi everyone, it's your girl Bebe Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, and the host of your weekly business show, Bebe Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Star Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Since the kids left, well, we needed to explore what else was out there.
So we got Sky and Netflix, from A Discovery of Witches to The Witcher.
And about time we found a little fantasy. Discover new worlds with Sky and Netflix.
Hello everybody, good evening. Thanks so much for coming along, and hello to everyone who's watching online, who I gather there's quite a lot of you. I'm Andrew, and I want to tell you about what I think is the most exciting and consequential science of our time. You can see that my talk is named after my book. It's Ageless, The New Science of Getting Older Without Getting Old. And I want to show you some of this new science and show you how I think it literally could make human beings ageless eventually. And I also think we need to answer the question of, would we actually want to do that? I want to change the way that you think about aging, because I think a lot of us think of aging as sort of a natural part of being alive. As you get older, you notice that your grandparents, then your parents, then your friends and yourself start to age. You get wrinkles, you get grey hair. Obviously, not everything about the aging process is bad. You acquire wisdom and experience during that time as well. But I think that aging is our greatest humanitarian challenge, and that might sound like a slightly weird thing to say, so I'm going to unpack that a bit during the first part of the talk. I think a lot of us also think that aging is inevitable. We see it happen to the people around us, but it also happens to animals. It happens to our pets, our cats, our dogs, our mice, our hamsters. It happens at very different rates in different species. But actually, if you've ever watched a pet get old, they tend to get old in a very similar way to the way that humans do. So is this just some sort of biologically universal sort of process of falling apart that we really can't do much about? Well, actually, the answer to that is no, because what this new science shows us is that the aging process is malleable, it's plastic, it's surprisingly controllable in the lab. We've got literally dozens of ways to slow down and even reverse this process. And some of these are making their first baby steps out of the lab into actual human clinical trials. This is a really, really exciting time. And I think that's the sort of the combination that makes this such a fascinating field for me. Because on the one hand, we've got this world's greatest humanitarian challenge, a genuine, huge problem for us to try and rise to. But then on the other side of the coin, we've got this enormous scientific potential, the ability to rise to that challenge. So I just think this is utterly fascinating, and I hope that I'll convince you all of that during the course of the evening. But where I'd like to start is right back at the